Welcome to the Real Advisor Podcast, TRAP, TRAP. Please follow us and join in the conversation on Twitter @Advisor Podcast, where you can suggest ideas and themes you'd like the TRAP team to discuss. Also remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a 6 out of 5-star review on iTunes. Doing all this really helps us, which means we can do more to help you. Now let's head over to the studio for the latest pile of TRAP.
Yes, indeed, dear Trappists. Welcome back to what many people are calling episode 44 of the Real Advisor Podcast, TRAP, TRAP. My name is Lick Lincoln, and joining me as ever in the digital studio of doom are the 4 other horsemen of the apocalypse. Andy, Ultra Heart, Carl Delavoce, the Voice Widger, and Alan, the Storyteller Smith. Now, gentlemen, we have a show packed full of absolutely nothing. So let's start unpacking it straight away with some more high-energy review reads read out by my very good friend, the Right Honourable Mr. Andrew Hart.
We have just one review this episode. This is from Keith Boys, who runs a great firm in Scotland, entitled An Honest and Refreshing Unedited Journey, 5 stars. You bring wisdom to those who are navigating their own uncertain path in the world. You bring reassurance that it's okay not to have all the answers. You bring peace of mind that it's okay to make mistakes and that you'll be wiser for it. You bring optimism and hope from your own achievements. You bring excitement to me and many others for what's possible. So thank you for taking the time to make a difference, to inspire me and many others. The true impact of this you'll never know, but I, for one, am hugely grateful. Great review. Back to you, boss.
Wow, what a lovely review.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Keith. That is lovely. Trappists, we do kind of live and die by these reviews because we're all shallow and vain, and the ego is unbounded. So please do leave a review on your, well, I would say your app of choice. It's going to be iTunes, isn't it? 6 out of 5 stars minimum, please. Or give us a 0 out of 5. We don't want anything in between, okay? We don't.
Yeah, we had a 3-star recently. They're the ones that hurt.
3 stars.
1 or
3
5,
star?
please.
Who does
Yeah,
that?
1 or 5.
Love us or loathe us, but nothing in between.
I thought that three-star review was very good, actually. We should definitely read that out coming up.
We will,
very soon.
eventually.
It was very good.
And
right.
Mate. Yeah. You're the only one who didn't get a bit of a paste in, so yeah.
Creep. Right, let's put a topical timestamp on this show with some topical tidbits. So we're getting near the big financial services event of the year. No, it's not Octo. No, it's not Hum. Yes, it's TRAP Live at London's swinging hippodrome in the heart of Leicester Square. London's equivalent of Times Square when it was a shithole. But never mind, the hippodrome's great, and Lola's basement bar is fantastic, and that's coming up. So please do look out for emails in your inbox telling you about what time it kicks off. They'll be going out shortly. Can't wait to catch up with all the Trappists. That's going to be absolutely great. Mr. Smith, you've got something you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be a fantastic event. And you're right, as Andy just said, we 3 of us went along and just sort of checked it out the other day, and it's looking good.
Perfect venue,
True
yeah.
story, there are 5 tickets remaining. And what we've decided to do in our wisdom is to offer them what we're going to call scholarship tickets. So they're designed for anyone who's early on in their career, early on in their financial planning journey. Maybe the stretch to get a train ticket and pay for a ticket, etc., might be a little bit too much. So they're going to be free, complimentary. There are literally 5 available, no more and no less. And the way you apply for them is simply get in touch with me. DM me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or via email. Get in touch. It literally has to be first come, first serve. The first 5 people to apply for scholarship tickets, and we'll have our own definition of who qualifies. But basically, anyone who's younger and earlier on in their career, please get in touch. You'll have a free complimentary ticket. Come along, and we'd love to see you on the day.
Very, very good. How noble we are. You see, we are nice, kind, caring, compassionate, empathetic people. Talking of being kind and caring and empathetic, I went to Spain recently to see my parents. My dad's recovering from a broken femur. He's doing okay, but they're 85 and 83, so they've got issues, as happens at that age. While I was out in Spain, in Iberia, I had a phone call from a client, and I couldn't take the call. He left a message, and I called him straight back on WhatsApp because I didn't want him to know that I was abroad. He doesn't need to know I'm in Spain. It's not his concern whatsoever. He's a client. He gets a call back. And I called him back, and this guy, I know him inside out. Like I know all my clients, like you guys know all your clients inside out, right? You know their foibles and what makes them tick and their general situation. And he is, like many people, he's been a buy-to-let investor. He's got other assets, but he's got 2 buy-to-lets. And for the last 5 years, he's kind of been treading water at best, even with mortgage rates at stupidly low rates. And now the rates have gone up, of course. He's underwater. So he phones me and says, Nick, I've got this money in my pension. He leaves a message. Nick, I've got this money in my pension pot. I just remind me again how much I can take out as tax-free cash because I need to blah, blah, blah. My mortgages are coming up. I need to refinance. I need some extra cash. So I called him back within about 3 minutes of him leaving a message on my phone. I talked to him in language he understands. You never use the word pension commencement lump sum with other human beings. That's used by people who have got zero empathy. You never use words like flexi access drawdown or any of this crud with other human beings, not if you love them, right? And I love my clients. I said, Dave, you got this tax-free cash. It's 25% of your untapped pot. Remember, you got the untapped pot. You can always take 25% of that as tax-free cash. In your case, that works out to about 25 grand, conveniently, but that's the case. And once you've done that, the balance, 75K, will go and join the rest of your tapped fund. That's the money you've already taken tax-free cash out from. Bear in mind, Dave, you can no longer take any more tax-free cash from that. And once the tax-free cash is gone, it's gone. Spoke to him in plain English in a language he understood. I didn't use any verbiage, and I got back to him within about 3 minutes of him leaving a call. And the reason I'm going on about this is that I think all 4 of our businesses and many of the Trappists who listen to this will have exemplary, outstanding service that puts them... There's an article in the show notes I'll link to about the declining levels of service in the UK and in Ireland as well, I imagine, where it's just impossible to get through to anybody at the first phone call. You're leaving messages with these big providers, and it's just an absolute nightmare. And I just want to reiterate that whatever fee your clients are paying you, because this is the this was we're going to come back to this over the coming months and years, even I think, about paying for something and not getting it. But that fee is not just about the annual review, or more correctly, the annual planning service. The fee clients are paying us is for exemplary service. And there's just an example, I think, of where we can deliver and which already puts us apart. So let's not get too hung up on our fees being just for the annual planning part. That's an element of it. But what sets us apart as owner business people, our clients, being base about it, right? Our clients are our income. We're not employees who are just there for the ride and then we'll bugger off to the next employer who dangles a bigger bit of fish in front of us. This is our life, and we live and die by our service standards. And I just want to defend IFAs, really do a bloody good job, because I'll give it a very basic example. We've got fitted wardrobes upstairs. They're put in 2019. They've got a 10-year warranty. The fascia is coming off all of all the wardrobes. And I'm in this ongoing battle to get the fascia replaced. And I sent an email and I hear nothing for weeks and weeks to this wardrobe company. Just a very silly example. And obviously utility companies are rubbish. HMRC has closed down its phone lines. I mean, for the love of Christ, what's happening in the world? So I think we're just saluting other IFAs and us and me, because we offer a fantastic service, which is a cut above. And that's a lot of what your fee is for. And people will love you for it. Disgruntled clients are the ones that complain. Happy clients do not complain. Right.
Bravo, Nick.
I think you should play the clap drop there, Nick. Play your own clap drop for yourself, please. Self-congratulate yourself.
We've already got one ultra, mate. We can't have 2, fella. But thank you. I appreciate the sentiments. So segueing seamlessly. Oh, by the way, I've got a thing on that as well about speedy boarding. Shall I go into speedy boarding?
Yeah, go on.
I've worked out what speedy boarding is. I'm going to channel my inner Rory Sutherland here, by the way. And if I do that, there might be some F-bombs in the next 60 seconds. So for those of you that are precious about it, like the lady left a 3 out of 5 star review, and the kids
or your children are in the car, yeah.
Now push the children out of the car. If you're going slow enough, you can come back and get them. There'll be a few minor grazers. Okay, speedy boarding is completely wrongly. This is how Rory Sutherland would say, speedy boarding. This is where the advertisers and marketers have got it completely wrong. Speedy boarding. Who wants to be on the fucking plane for any longer than normal? Who wants to sit on it for 30 minutes longer next to some corpulent lard arse who's got a BO problem? No, they shouldn't call it speedy boarding. It should be called speedy exiting. The first 5 rows get off the plane first, don't they? That's what it's all about. If you're at the front there, the steps always go to the front because we can't have the dear pilot walking down the fuselage. He wants to get out the cockpit, turn right and sod off. You always get off first. If you're in speedy boarding, you're surrounded by the infirm, people on crutches, people with walking sticks. If the old dear in front of you is getting on your nerves as you go through the airport, give her a tap on the ankle. She tumbles down, you clamber over her, and you're first at immigration control, you're first out of the airport, and you're first in the limousine. Speedy boarding, I've always resented paying for it, right? If it's called speedy exit, sign me up. And now back to the trap pack. Thanks, Rory. That was excellent.
brilliant.
So that's my view on speedy. You are paying for speedy exit. They should call it speedy exit. It's just a. So who wants to set the plane for longer than needs to? Right. Sorry, Alan. Go
Good
on.
point. Good point.
Oh my God.
Back in the world of the mundane world
Sorry.
of financial planning, but that's very good, Nick. You've got an alternative career as a Rory Sutherland impersonator. Just following on from your point, look, you're absolutely right. The role and the service that we provide is a lot more than this sort of magical, mythical annual review, but that's what the regulator seems to be heavily focused upon. I guess a lot of this is going to come back to what it says in your sort of terms of business or your agreement. There will be a list of, should be a schedule of services, should be, and I think a lot of financial planners are urgently reviewing their terms. Nick, you mentioned last time, actually, just. And
I have, yeah.
I think yours is, it was generally, you said it was pretty good, but you just, what did you do? You added something, say, and the additional services.
I tightened up. I said, if you decline the annual planning meeting, your fees will continue to be taken. But if the situation persists, then the chances are we will terminate the relationship. But the fees will continue to be taken, even if you don't take the annual planning meeting. Now, whether that holds up or not, I do not know. But I put it in the terms of business, and they're signing it. So there we go.
Yeah, and the challenge, of course, is that you're right. We are offering a sort of comprehensive service, which includes that, like you just did, being very, very responsive to client inquiries, being proactive, being ahead of it. It doesn't all revolve around an annual review, but of course the regulator is very, very much data driven. So they need to know that's one way they can determine whether people were getting this thing. And
it's an obvious key metric. Yeah,
it's an obvious key metric. And talking of key metrics, and what I wanted to add here was, I attended a seminar conference thing last week in London, and it was very interesting. It was around compliance. There was a number of sort of compliance firms and experts, and those firms have been brought in. They're all getting very busy around nowadays, and some of the information that was shared was quite enlightening. One of the things was that, as we all know, there's been a hell of a lot of consolidation going on in the market in the last five or 10 years. And lots of firms have gone out and hoovered up lots of smaller IFA practices. And none of these firms have got data in terms of people that they did reviews for. So whereas they might well have done
absolute shambles.
They might well have done a review, there's nothing to prove it. So this Dear CEO letter that went out, I think, to the top 20 firms in the country, that's causing a lot of consternation. And one of the reasons is there's an underlying belief that these reviews were carried out, but they can't prove it.
How can you do a review without proving it? There must have been an email to confirm the meeting. There must have been some rebalancing.
All right, so here's the thing, and it's a
financial plan.
This is a
change of contributions.
This is
like, has to be something.
This can be rhetorical. You don't have to answer it. But if you were sent a request from the regulator and said, send us a spreadsheet, list all your clients, list all the ones who have contracted for a review, which would be all of them, I guess.
Yep.
List all the ones who had a review, and list all the ones who either declined or for one reason or another weren't able to have a review. And then for those ones, list the date at which you turned off the fee, if at all. The question is, could you access that? I mean, full disclosure, I came back to the office and said to Shireen, our head of operations, can we do this? She said, of course we can. What, straight away? Yes. Thank God for that. But there's quite a lot of firms who would have to literally go through each client file one by one because there's no central source of the meetings that they had.
Doing it properly.
Well, exactly. But and
what's
happened
built
is
around service. The firm is built around sales.
Yeah, exactly. And so particularly it's the larger firms, I gather, that are really coming unstuck here because yes, they can probably find out, but some of these have got 10,000 clients, more, 50,000 clients.
Yeah, so none of them are getting
and
proper
to go
reviews.
through to at a sort of press of the button, give a list of all the clients and the ones that got reviews, the ones that didn't, the ones where you turned off so there is this huge issue, and I gather there's a lot of worried people are sitting in boardrooms of large intermediary firms, particularly those that have bought 10, 20, 50 firms in the last little while. I thought that was
They thought it
quite
was
interesting.
the easiest gravy train cash cow, and now they're realising, sugar, 50% of this income might be turned off if we don't up our game.
Not only does
Rightly
it be turned
so.
off, but you might have to refund for the last 7 years or so.
Yeah, we need to up our game. Yeah, and the
Yeah.
refunds could wipe out the company.
Yeah.
That's all right because they're just Phoenix and we'll pay for it. So great. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry. Okay. Done. Okay. Yeah. Good point. Well made. It's the ongoing. I think I think we all think it's the ongoing next big thing. Perhaps not so much in your neck of the woods, Carl, but certainly in the UK. Okay. Andrew, budding author.
Over to me. Yeah, so I've been threatening to write a book for some time. I've gone on various different projects with this, and I'm sure some of the Trappists listening would also be thinking about writing a book in the niche or niche that they are part of. I'm sure Mr. Storyteller's got a couple of books up his sleeve, but that's another story. So I finally found a sort of publisher to help me write this book. I just need an accountability partner to, hold my feet to the fire as I put all of these chapters together and launch the book. I'm using a company. I've not yet signed the final terms. It cost a few quid. It's not cheap, but again, they're professionals and they're going to
How
help
much? Please publish my book.com.
I'm paying about 14 grand to get this
Wow.
done.
Woo!
It's paid over, let's say...
I'd be your accountability partner for 13.
Basically, keep it simple. I'll be working on the project over 14 months, let's say. So it's £1,000 a month, and there's different time frames, and there's different people that work with me at different points, and there's copy edited.
What's the book going to be about?
The book is working title. It's going to be called, again, Push the Kids Out the Car. No Bullshit Financial Advice. That's the working title. So, if there's other Trappists listening to this that are thinking about writing a book, the company I'm using is called therightbookcompany.com. I'm dealing with a lady there called Sue. She was highly recommended by a good personal friend of our show, Jason Butler. So that's it.
It's what the world needs. Another personal finance.
Obviously, they're gonna help me with the sort of overall project, but it's that accountability thing. I've gone to write a couple of books before, and I've got chapters coming out of my sort of ears and different folders and stuff. But anyway, this is why I need to just pay the money.
Does it come with crayons?
Professional. Sorry?
Does it come with crayons?
It's colouring in.
Yeah,
maybe we should do that.
Yeah.
But does it
Paid
say
by number?
buy?
Book publishing.
It says buy global equities and stare out the window for the next 20 years.
Because a lot of our critics would say we do paint by numbers, which is actually the knack of it. But
There's just while you're on there's
it's not going to be your normal personal finance BS that's out there. Get yourself out
Totally
of debt.
different.
It's going to be totally different, totally refreshing. It's going to be a seminal book that everyone can refer to.
A bestseller.
A bestseller, exactly.
Daniel
London,
Priestley's
and
got a
Tokyo.
new business, I think, where they use
Scribe and stuff, is that what it's called?
No, magicbooks.ai, where apparently you can create a book, far quicker, far better, far lower, and
No, I'm
probably
going
cost
to
you a
write
lot
every
less than
single
14
word,
grand.
and I'm going to write every single word, and I want an old school publisher. But yeah, anyway,
Okay,
that's
we
that.
want an update every month. How many chapters?
Right.
you just put some money towards the editing side of that your budget. Yeah?
I was thinking about how can I put that to him. You just did.
It's really hard. It's really. I mean, I think
My English teacher would be very
you've got to work out what to
proud.
cut out. It's well, Andy, listen, seriously, the man in the arena and all that. Good luck, and I'm sure it'll be it'll be something.
Carl, you and I bought Andy's previous book, didn't we? Let's not talk about that.
Yeah, I am
No,
actually a
let's talk about it.
semi-published author with a 5-minute money message. The 5-minute money message is cracking, but these guys
Oh
are
my god.
not too much of a fan of the quality of the book. But anyway, I think it was missing like a week in August or something out of the calendar in it or something.
Yes, it was.
Anyway, the
Never mind,
images.
Listen, you got to be pushing stuff out there to sometimes not get the product perfectly right.
That's
Exactly.
true. That's
People don't
true.
push anything out.
Fair play
Thank
to
you,
you.
Father.
He definitely
Thanks,
did
Father.
that. He definitely did that.
Right, Wodge, voice.
Yes.
You had a what were you doing for that week in Park
In
Nasilla?
Park Nasilla. So Park Nasilla is on the Ring of Kerry. Absolutely beautiful part of the world. And
Where is it?
I went down there.
Where is
it?
It's a beautiful part of the world, Andrew.
Kerry, okay.
Where you boys have actually been. Where the Trap podcast was lodged, if you remember
Great
correctly.
time, great place.
Where it was born.
Great work.
But so look, I've done this the last couple of years, and it's really well spent time. So just to get myself away, kind of have a chance to think about the business and where we might go and all that kind of stuff. So look, I would encourage anybody, especially if you're running a team, just get yourself away, spend some time just thinking about the business. I did bits and pieces of work and lots of long walks, and then bits and pieces of other work. So it was very, very good, and I would recommend everybody does it. I know Alan does it as well.
How can you do this? And I get criticism for doing the same a couple of times a year, and I get just taken apart for my little weekend retreats.
Because it's me.
You book an Airbnb that's got no heating, no food, and leave your clothes there. At least Carl went to a hotel.
Some of the above is true, not all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's a
No,
good thing to do.
My
I
hot
recommend it.
distiller. I like that.
Highly
Nice.
recommend.
Okay,
I
very
made a
good.
mistake this year. I put in lots of video calls, and I shouldn't have done that because it just interrupts the flow of just trying to actually focus on the bigger picture stuff. I got stuck in the weeds a little, whereas the whole idea of the week is
take
to,
enough time to think, to actually
Yeah.
think without a screen or a call or whatever it is. Just remove devices and go for long walks. You have your best ideas, I always find.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I got lovely weather, so it was really good, really good.
Brilliant. Good for you. Recharge those batteries. Okay, and I know this year it was a big part of your sort of overall just goals and aspirations was to make sure that you looked after yourself and your balance, as it were.
100%. And I'm actually, I am very intentional about that this year, and it is working beautifully for me. So long may that continue.
Excellent, Carl. Excellent. Because we do love your voice, but you heard about 3 or 4 at the same time in your head, and that must have been quite unsettling at times. Okay. PIPs. Smith.
Yes, sir. Pirates and Pinstripes, aka Sharks and Suits. Look, we do speak about this from time to time. When all this other stuff's going on in the financial planning community is getting some criticism about this kind of not delivering on annual reviews or whatever. I think it's fair to say that all of us, when we discuss this, online and offline, some of the things that we sort of come across in our jobs, you think that really sort of makes you sort of pause for thought and say there are some real, people here who are, in our opinion, the biggest culprits, the people who are, really challenging in terms of their sort of client delivery and client service. Most of the people listening to this will know who we mean. You'll have come across them in your job. But just two brief things that I've come across recently. Do a back-to-back drop. I've got 2 very, very quick stories. Very quick.
Oh, Christ, on a bike.
Don't worry about it. All
It's
right.
having a snooze then. That's quite nice. Let's do it.
Right. So, no.
Grab yourself a drink, a very long drink. It's story time with Alan Smith.
We were referred to a client a few months ago. Her investment portfolio was managed by a firm of discretionary portfolio managers who shall remain nameless. There was zero financial planning. There was zero sort of consideration of her broader family circumstances, what she wanted to achieve today, tomorrow, in the future out of her life. It was basically a money management facility. And she was not particularly happy with it. So she introduced to us, and of course we go through the normal process, and we do a deep dive in the portfolio. And long story short, we make a recommendation that she relocates her assets across to us, and we do a complete, the usual stuff that all you guys do, comprehensive financial planning, and take into other family members as well who are important to her, and give the whole sort of family financial planning experience. And that's all well and good. And she says, great, like to engage with you guys. Let's go ahead. So we make the arrangements to move the assets from the existing and now previous portfolio manager. They get all uppity about it. They write some very blunt emails, which we inadvertently get copied into, which were on the verge of libelous, criticizing our firm, which was, I felt pretty unprofessional, unnecessary. You can't win them all, and sometimes clients do decide to move on. And these were perfectly legitimate reasons, and we were not in any way critical of them. We just said, this is the way we do things. This is the way we operate. This is the way we manage money. So they fought tooth and nail. Eventually, the client insists we go ahead, transfer the assets, and this firm wanted about £23,000 in effectively exit fees and charges, which was their costs for effectively for selling the assets. Now, we all know monies are held on platforms. These monies were held on a platform. It's an administrative function. It takes us, minutes really to click a few buttons on a platform. So we couldn't work out how they could possibly justify these outrageous fees. As I say, well north of £20,000 just to execute trades and send funds to our platform of choice. We thought that was unreasonable. The client was very upset by the whole thing. Back to your point earlier on, Nick, about just customer service and customer experience. None of this shows any of us in a good light, because the client's then thinking, "Oh, God, financial services, you're all bloody, after the money." So we then embarked upon, a fulsome debate, if you like, with the seeding advisor, and got the client to write effectively a sort of I never encourage clients to write complaint letters, but to put it this way, to express her dissatisfaction with the way that she was being treated on exiting the portfolio. We managed to win that battle. Eventually, Renee, they waived this outrageous fee level, and the client sort of reallocated the funds, and she's now very happy. She's now with us. She's got the full comprehensive service. But again, it just makes me think, it's just unreasonable, unacceptable, and unfair. And if these organizations, who are well-known companies, are doing this, then there's a lot of other customers and clients who are being poorly served by them. And the second one was just another similar situation, someone who we're currently speaking with. And they'd asked for some performance data and ask us to compare. And this goes back to the point we've raised before. Sometimes when people want to know about performance early on, I'm kind of resistant on it. But back to this point, Carl and I certainly spoke about this in the past. Meet the customer, meet the potential client where they are. If they want to see performance data, because I know our data will be good compared to a lot of these other people, so we're happy to do that. And we use Financial Express. We run sort of portfolio charts. And they're all, they're absolutely legitimate. We, make sure we're covering the time period. We're not sort of being selective of the time period. But this one company, again, they use their model portfolio service for the client. I've shared it with you guys. It's not fair for me to share it, and give the names, but just, the fee was 1.67% annualized. Again, it's zero planning. This is just for MPS, portfolio management, 1.67 year. We know you can get that for 20 basis points. So it's an absolute multiple of what you can get for elsewhere. And looking at their own, portfolio data sheets, they had underperformed their own benchmark over 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years. Every single data period, and some of them were hugely underperforming. And not surprisingly, this potential client comes to us and says, "I'm just a little bit disappointed with the performance. What are you guys?" And it was just dreadful. And there's quite a few millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions in this particular model service. And again, it's not all about the lowest cost fund. It's not all about trying to get the best possible performance. We know, but this was on a risk-adjusted basis. So we're comparing ours, absolute like for like. We're only a small business, but our investment, for the money that was involved, this client has lost out, in inverted commas, hundreds of thousands of pounds over the last number of years, just by being in a suboptimal, expensive, underperforming investment portfolio.
The dangerous risk of low returns, which very few people talk about.
Well, that's a kind of that's a slightly other thing. But this was just, I'm just comparing like with like. This was, it was a predominantly equity portfolio, but it was just dreadful in terms of its investment returns. And of course, one of the reasons it was so bad is because the costs were so great. It's so difficult to try and beat the market. If you charge 1.6% a year just for portfolio management, you're not going to be able to do that consistently. And they weren't able to do it for any single time period. And yet there's millions. So no doubt there's thousands of clients that are invested with them. They're a well-known name, quite a posh brand. And it's just disappointing. I'm not, we get some pushback here about criticizing other parts of our sector, of our industry, but I think it's justified. I think there are just better things out there for the investing public. And, it's not saying that all of ours are the best things since sliced bread, but ours is generally a very simple and very effective and generally a lower cost approach. And there were just two examples in the last couple of weeks I thought I'd share. I know we all have them on a regular basis, but it's it's disappointing. We can all do better. Any thoughts, or should we move on?
No, I think that's well said, and I think we all concur with that. Quick on the client who was it a lady client? The first example. You're muted. Huh? Okay. Did she have a relationship with anyone at the firm, an advisor, or was she? No, she did. Was she passed around amongst?
No, she had. Did? I believe she had a relationship with with more than one. She had a point of contact, but of course these are portfolio managers. Your portfolio manager, Tarquin.
So I'm kind of getting at really. There wasn't there wasn't that human. There wasn't that.
There
human
wasn't. This is the thing.
link,
This is, as we know, there's a lot of organizations whose raison d'etre is money management. So they will have a range of people. They'll have their portfolio manager and their assistant fund manager and their, I don't know, their fixed interest manager and their blah, 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 and all this sort of thing. But they know practically zero about this client's life. That's the thing. They just know how much money she's got and what what her risk profile is. And that's about it.
They also, Alan, though, they know, another thing they know well is that they've underperformed 3, 6, 9, 1, 3, 7, 10, whatever, right? They know this, but they confuse the clients by, making the whole investment story a very complex issue.
Convoluted,
And then if they do come up against, a Capital or a Metis or whatever, they'll kind of diss the simplicity of the portfolios we put forward.
Sophisticated.
Well, this is what the emails were saying. They've obviously done their research. They found out that we do not have discretionary permissions, which is very intentional. We explored this years ago. Should we take discretionary permissions? But we make very, very few fund switches. So it doesn't seem to be any point in doing so.
That's nothing.
So that was one of their criticisms towards us. And we can't buy single line stock items. As if that's a negative. We can't buy
happy days,
BP or Tesco or whatever as an individual stock, whereas they've got that together with a bunch of other crap. And
you could be layering gilts, though. You could be layering gilts if you could do that.
Gilt ladders.
Create an income. Gilt ladders. I mean, if you can't do gilt ladders, you're not at the game, are you?
You could be buying and selling structured notes every single day.
Oh, the joy.
I know. Yeah, exactly. It's quite revealing, actually, when you see an email which was sent to the client, which she then forwards on to us, and you go through the email chain, you think, interesting.
Yeah, but you also look at the email chain and say, see all those weaknesses they've pointed out? Well, we think they're actually really good for you from a compliance and governance point of view.
Thank you so much for highlighting.
Add in an extra layer of protection for you.
But this is the thing, though, Carl. In all honesty, from a client's perspective, they don't know, right? Someone else who they've known and worked with for years says these are weaknesses, and this firm that you're moving to, they can't do this and they can't do that. So she comes to us and said, well, what do you think? And we go, no, we agreed that we can't do this very intentionally. We could choose to, should we wish to. Should we think there's a benefit? There is zero benefit. In fact, there's a negative benefit. There's a minus in doing so. But the client is just confused by all this stuff. So it's often a challenge, and it's maybe something we should come back to, is when you're meeting with prospective clients and they're hearing your proposal, your thoughts and your ideas, but they're working with an existing firm, and they might be working with them for years. They might know the people personally. I've certainly come across instances in the past where the prospective client used to play golf with them and do all that sort of stuff. And you're kind of telling them that one of their sort of professional friends is a bullshitter. And it's a difficult one to actually get across in certain circumstances. The relationship can historically be quite good, and you've got to navigate that quite carefully, I think.
Yeah, you're so right. We had a client, it's probably last year or maybe the year before, where the annual management charge was quoted as kind of 1% plus VAT. And we were reviewing it kind of 3 years in, and we looked down through all the fees and added up as nearly 3%.
Jesus Christ.
And we're like, this is slam dunk. Client's going to move across, and the client is like, okay, look, I'm going to have a word with them about that, because that's very bad. But look, I know them really well, and they're a big firm and whatever. So you're right. It's people. Sometimes will put up with it. And you gotta be careful how you position it, I suppose.
And at the end of the day, it's people's life savings. So they obviously want to make sure it's going to the right new person if they're switching. Well, sometimes switching is either harder friction than finding the first person in the first place. So they don't want to make a second mistake as such.
Well, that's right. And the challenge you've got, and again, we have had exactly the same thing as you've described, Carl, where they're saying on one hand, let's say it's 1%. We just lift the lid a little bit, and they think, no, it's 2 or 3 times that. And then you've got the client saying, well, they told me that, and it proved to be not correct. How do I know that what you're saying is going to be correct? How do I know that find out 3 years from now that what you said? And it's a tricky one to deal with.
Also, I don't know if you guys can remember a few years ago, a horrendous example I saw. There was a firm, a very well-known firm, that was charging 3% on rebalances. Do you remember this one?
Yeah.
So when they do a rebalance every single year, funny outcome, they've switched all the freaking funds. So it wasn't a minor rebalance of.
You mean rebalance, or do you mean fund switch?
Well, a rebalance fund switch type
No,
thing.
so we're moving from fund A to fund B within the portfolio, and we'll charge, 3%. Oh my
3%
God.
for switching around money that they already look after, that they're already charging on. And it was public on their website. And then all IFAs started ploughing in and referring to it. Then they pulled it from their website.
Oh, yeah, I do remember
It's white collar
that.
crime.
Yeah.
It's white collar crime.
It absolutely is.
Charging three. So it's like, let's say someone's got £1 million that have already been invested with that firm for X amount of years and they've decided to switch all the funds. They're going to be charged 30 grand for a 5-minute online execution, with obviously with a 950-page suitability letter that explains why they're moving from crap Japanese fund to crapper Japanese fund. It's insane.
That's the real wealth transfer that's going on from the clients of those firms to the.
That's the joke, isn't it? My investments put the children through public school. Unfortunately, they were my stockbrokers' children.
Exactly.
So that's the line. Just closing on this, you have to, and you all alluded to it. Really, you've got to be very careful, haven't you? Because if you're saying to somebody, "Listen, you've been turked by this other firm," the person you're telling that to might feel a bit stupid and might feel a bit defensive about it. So you've got to, you have to navigate your way through this.
You definitely do, and you don't want to say it anyway. And I've learned to my cost, and you certainly don't want to say it to a couple, where a husband and wife, and one of them looks at the other and says, "Did you not know this? Have you cost us a lot of money?" No, you don't want to shame anyone. There's ways and means. You've got to be delicate around the communication, but we've got to do it.
I don't know. I don't know. I think me and Nick
you
might do
enjoyed your game of golf with Bill, who was screwing us all the time.
I never liked him. I never liked him.
Talking of potential snafus, let's move on to the next topical tip, which is a snafu that I've got with the FCA. I don't know if Andy or Alan, you've experienced this, but the FCA, bless them, have introduced two-factor authentication on their website for their reg data stuff. You can't opt out of it, of course. I'd love someone to hack into the FCA with my credentials and fill out those shitty returns. It's all garbage anyway. Let somebody else make it up. But no, they put two-factor authentication in. I can't get into the bloody thing.
That's obviously a joke, Nick. It's a very serious report that you file every year.
It's a very serious report, and it's a very, very serious report. We don't make it up, do we, between us? Whose turn is it this year? Am I doing yours? You're doing mine? I forget. Anyway.
It's the bane of my life. Jesus.
Two-factor. That is
a big one on the 29th of April.
FCA.
I would like to distance myself from those.
I do not know this guy.
My biggest asset now is depreciation. It's the only way I can get things to balance. Anyway, let's move on. And you're all laughing.
Wait for the call.
Don't. They can come. They can go. I give up. Anyway,
Nick, haven't you got the record? Sorry, Nick, haven't you got the record for submitting the FCA return in the fastest time possible? You literally do it on the morning of
7 a.m. and I do it about 8 a.m. an hour later.
So the opening window is midnight the day before, and you submit it by 7 a.m. They've never seen this speed.
Well, this is my point, Andrew. This is my point. So the cadence of the FCA reg data stuff, as you'll know, UK advisors, is every 6 months, and the 12-monthly one is the big one. But that's every 6 months. And then you get these occasional ones in between, which are just even more garbage than normal. How much motor insurance have you sold to people of Bangladeshi descent who are under 5'3"? And you go, okay, and do you want that in round? Is that decimal points after that or not? And then you find it's not. So all that crap. Anyway, so I've got one of these emails the other day. Oh, Christ, okay, I'll log on and do it to get it out of my life because I'm a bit like that. And I can't do it. They've brought in two-factor authentication. They won't let you use your standard authenticator app. You've got to use the Salesforce app. So I've now got to download this different authenticator app, which I've now downloaded on my bloody phone. Oh, God. And it doesn't recognise the QR code on the PDF guide the FCA put out as to how. So I'm in this back and forth with them, and it's just
comical.
Ties in really with my service thing earlier on. It's just not, and this PDF, by the way, is like written by a child. It says, look at the QR code in step 4. The QR code's in step 6. Oh, I was only a 2-page frigging PDF. You don't get much right.
I know.
Anyway,
it's like
just
a committee.
Nightmare. And a classic example of bureaucracy gone bloated and just doesn't care.
But you're doing okay about this. This isn't bothering you.
Carl, I was not at my best with this. I wasn't happy having to download another bloody app, but the fact doesn't even work.
I've shared hotel rooms with you. I know what you're like, Nick. Yeah.
Can you imagine Victor
Meldrew?
I don't believe it.
Victor Meldrew on steroids.
But a serious point, Nick. I think you are the fastest person to submit those big returns to the FCA. They should ring you up and say, "How do you do this?" Like publicly. You don't look like you're the most on-it financial advisor in the UK, whereas you are showing us you are. What are you doing,
Imagine that the
friend?
FCA hold up Nick as an example of
the poster child for efficiency.
As a paragon. Well, if you're a one-man band and you've got all your accounts in the cloud, so that 24/7 they're up to date, it's that job's wrong. And I am very. I mean, Carl, you made my. But I am very organised, right? So I can find everything I need like that.
That's one way of
like your dishwasher instructions, and the boiler.
Right, okay. I'm glad I brought that up. I'm glad. Thanks for the thumbs up. Right, Waj, give us another one of your investment. This is a recurring thing for you. I'm not saying anything about you or your countrymen, but this seems to be recurring.
To win friends and influence
No,
people.
so this was I got a little bit of kickback privately on what I said the last time, and I'm like, and I did say, hey, do you know what? You should actually put that out there in the public, which I'm brave enough to do all of the time, and I have no problem anybody challenging me. Anybody. Anyway, there was a latest report from the Gardaí, which is the police here in Ireland, saying that there was 25 million or something like that lost in fraudulent investment firms last year. Now, so basically what this is scammers basically, cloning websites or pretending that they're dealing in cryptocurrency or whatever. And the interesting thing was that, this is 25 million. So we're not talking about masses amount of money, and it's throughout a year, but they were all like 30, 40, 50, 60 grand cases. And there was people thinking they were buying cryptocurrency and we've spoken about this before, Alan, people going in and cloning websites. So look, I just put it up from the point of view, like, I suppose from the client's point of view, they have to be very, very careful who they're choosing to do their business with. But I suppose it is, we do have a responsibility ourselves to have some sort of trackers out there as to, are people pretending that they're Metas Ireland or Values Division or whatever, So I know we do have a tracker. Don't ask me how that works, but if anybody does try to, to pretend they're Metas Ireland, we'll be all over it straight away. So I just thought I'd mention it because, like, the reputational damage that would occur for your firm, you would have done nothing wrong at all.
Horrendous.
But, it is out there. So, just be careful. And I think this is only kind of getting started. It's only ramping up.
There's not a ton you can do. I know that both, I think, Andy and our website have been sort of cloned or semi-cloned, and we've identified them, and you can communicate, you report it to the FCA and everyone else you possibly can, but ultimately...
Yeah, you're in a whole other world of mess.
There's not a million things you can do.
I suppose being aware of it allows you to make decisions as to what you can or can't do. The worst thing would be if someone is doing this for a period of 2 or 3 or 4 weeks or whatever, then you're kind of going to be reacting as opposed to being proactive about it.
Investment scams are not... sorry, go on.
Yeah, they're not going to go away, Andy. You're right.
Yeah, investment scams are not going away anywhere.
Yeah, and AI is just going to make them more and more and more sophisticated.
Human nature and greed, fooling their money. His book, same as ever, talks about it in detail. It's not going away. Investment greed scams are there to stay. Here to stay, sorry. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Okay, folks, 42 minutes. Let's have a quick, tight wrap up. Mr. Smith, excite us with a PI renewal story.
Just want to update. We're in the process of renewing. It's always quite interesting when you hear from other advisors. The PI is kind of the bane of all our lives. It's historically been, to my mind, it's just expensive. It's a necessary expense, and it just got the cost beginning to get kind of outrageous. I think all these other sort of scams things we're talking about, what actually happens is a lot of companies will close down, and they've got, because of the financial services compensation scheme, that's part of the thing. There's a levy that we all pay, contribute into this kind of safety net, and the cost and the DB pension transfer debacle and all that went on. So it was an increasing cost for us over the last few years, despite the fact we run a very sort of tight ship here. But I just wanted to report, we're just in the process of renewing. We've been quoted. Our revenue has gone up, but our PI premium has gone down. And it's gone down it's gone down about 10%, which I think is pretty good overall, despite the fact our revenues has gone up. And hopefully that is a sign of things to come. Having said that, and talking about administrative processes, the process is a freaking nightmare. You think the sort of financial service that we operate in a kind of the dark ages, the sort of the traditional insurance, Lloyd's of London type professional indemnity insurance market. And, no disrespect to Dan, our broker, and all the rest of that. It's just the sector that they work in. You got to fill in these like 80-page, or Shireen does here, 80-page application forms kind of by hand or typing them. And you can't just say it's all the same information as last year. Here's the information that we've got. Here's our this year's information. Everything else remains the same. Got to transfer them all the information across. And it takes the best part of a day to do this process. And then they kind of walk around and speak to the underwriters. It just seems like nothing's much has changed since the kind of, the 17th century, the Lloyds of London coffee shops. There is one company, we haven't used them yet, but I heard a couple of positive responses called Bear Rock. Heard about these? Anyone looked at these? They seem to their website, and again, no idea how good they are, how good or bad they are, but the whole process seems, I've had a couple of people saying it's really good. Everything's digitized, all the data's there. And increasingly, this is another thing talking about AI and what have you, more and more of this data will be aggregated, will be accessible. And I think the better firms will benefit from it because we'll be able to demonstrate our activities and what we're doing in order to secure a better rate. This is all about risk management. I would like to think we're a very low risk business to any insurer because we do all the right things, but where it's hard necessarily to prove it or to differentiate yourself. So hopefully technology is finally coming to the PI insurance market. And hopefully this time next year, Shireen won't have to waste a day filling in a form by hand. Nick?
I've had the same PI form since I've been out on my own since 2008. So what's that? I'm in my 16th year of filling out a paper form. It's not even an editable PDF. It's a PDF you have to print off. And as you said, you just add an extra year and you copy all the previous years over. My handwriting is bad enough at the best of times. I mean, I should have been a doctor. So what I did in an idle moment, I've actually created the Google Doc. I've replicated the PI form with the questions, and I'm going to send that off this year via DocuSign. And they can, I can say they can like it or lump it. I've got to, if they say no, Lick, we need the paper, I'm going to use it on it because I've got to use,
share that with me, Lick. I think we use the same people.
Yeah, collegiate.
Yeah.
It's fine. And who are great. I mean, they're fine. I've got no issue with them. My PI insurance has gone down as well, despite increased turnover. That's all lovely, but it is just going back on the arc, isn't it? Incredible.
There's often a couple of extra questions, though, isn't there, Nick? Like 1 or 2 every year.
Oh, I just say yes to one and no to the other. I think as long as you say yes to half of them and no to the other, you're okay. just jumble up the sequence. So have 3 yeses and 2 no's.
A risk profile questionnaire.
Yeah.
a mumbo jumbo PI.
You give it to clients and they say, "Can you just fill it in for me?" You go, no, it's slightly different.
I think the FCA and the PI insurers are enjoying this episode. Nick Lincoln's my name. Capital Asset Management is my firm, and I'm based in Limerick and Hatchen.
Oh, well, okay. I was just going to say we are met as Ireland.
Yeah, go to Ireland. Yeah. That's where it is. Okay, look. 47 minutes, shoot me. Let's move on to the meat and potatoes of the show. And it's that hoary old subject of property. People either love it. No, I wouldn't say people loathe it, but people generally love it, especially in the UK, especially in Ireland. We're all obsessed with property prices. There's not a day goes by when you're not on Rightmove looking at that property you can't quite afford, but enjoying the drone videos of a garden that's too big and you'll never own. Oh, it seems a bit of an obsession. So we're going to start off with a discussion around property, and we're going to start off with Maven Ultra.
That's very aspiration of you, Nick. Well, as you well know, I'm an ex-polyester suit wearing, slightly smelling of desperation mortgage broker.
Yeah, this is true.
So I am heavily involved in mortgages and the property buying process, and from the age of I think 22 to 28, I was in the mortgage business. Was today I'm going to just sort of open it up and sort of widen the conversation around our personal thoughts on property, the various different flavors of it, but mainly clients and their obsessions or not with property. So as a wealth creation strategy, which we're in the wealth creation business, I'm pro individuals owning, or individuals or companies owning physical property. Any other flavors of property funds, syndicates, commercial properties, student lets, all this stuff that's just been devised by people, I'm not a fan of. I put that in the financial trash bucket. But you buying a single family home for X hundred thousands, getting a mortgage, putting a deposit down and renting it out, I'm sort of a fan of that wealth creation strategy. It provides a rising income through rising rents. And when something provides a rising income, like physical property and global equities, as a result of the rising income, you have rising capital value. And what most people do is the property, keep it simple, doubles in 20 years or pick a time frame. They remortgage, they buy another one, and it sort of creates this sort of wealth fountain situation. So mainly to younger clients. So I have taken on various different clients that have been involved in the property game to a minor or major extent. Younger advisors sometimes get a bit excited when they come across a portfolio landlord with a shed load of property and the numbers seem quite big and the net worth seems quite high, but they generally make really bad financial planning clients. We work with the people that sort of had enough of the property game. They realize it's a high hassle factor, high tax environment, and they now want to sort of get involved in traditional wealth creation routes, which is investing in global equities via tax wrappers, typically. So yeah, you can waste your time with portfolio landlords as a financial planner, and then you realize actually they're not my people. I want to focus on some other people. Most of my clients have one or two properties in the background. Some have property companies with more properties inside them. But early on, I want to sort of gauge, are you just going to continually, on the quest of buying more and more properties? Anytime you get a small amount of money in your ISAs, you're just going to, buy another property, etc. So I really try and sort of screen the clients early on to work out, are they just property mad and they're going to be property mad forever? Or are they going to just sort of diversify now and move away from the physical property asset class and build up traditional wealth? So that's my starter for 10. I'm pro property, you being the owner of it. Any other flavor of it, I'm not a fan of. And I know, and I've seen it work. I've obviously seen some horror stories. I've been a landlord myself. I'm a landlord myself. And I also understand traditional ways of building wealth, which is, via tax wrappers and global equities. So that's where I sit with it. Over to you, Nick, who has a slightly different opinion.
Yes, I mean, I'm obviously in favour of property as your home. Owning property over renting it to me does seem a bit of a no-brainer. I mean, other European countries, the Germans, they rent far more than we do here. Maybe it works though. I don't know. I've talked about this before with your point, Andy, about you younger advisors might take on clients with property portfolios and think, well, over time I can probably persuade them to diversify and divest some of them and invest the proceeds perhaps in other asset classes.
Yeah,
Good luck. Exactly. It never happens. Once people get there, unless they have a really bad experience, once people get the property bug, they're just immersed in it, and it's all time consuming. Being a buy-to-let landlord, I'm just not a fan. A very prosaic example, I sold my last house in 2018. I'd been there for 18 years. What property suffers from is this perception, this time perception kind of this fog. Because you don't get the property valued every day, the same way the great companies are valued, you only get it valued when you come to sell it, really. You might get a value, you might get an estate agent around to give you a valuation, but you never know what you're going to get until you sell it. And because we only sell our family homes, for example, every 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, even longer time periods than that, we think, oh, we bought it for that, and now it's this. Look how much it's gone up. So my property, I had it for 18 years, and it's gone up by 90% over that time.
Is there a blue plaque outside this previous Lincoln Towers?
Here lives Victor Meldrew.
Okay.
2000 to 2018. You'll have a plaque over your house soon, mate. It might be where you live. So you think, okay, well, no, I think it sounds condescending. I probably would, 90% appreciation in an asset class. That's really good. No one property's a no-brainer, but actually it's not. That's only 3.6% annual return. And my house was a new build, so you pay a bit in 2000. So you pay a bit of a premium for that, sure, but it won't be that much. 3.6% compounded return is not exciting. That's nominal. You knock off inflation, which was running at 2.8%. You've got an asset that's grown by 0.8% per annum over 18 years. And you haven't even looked at mortgages and everything else. Now, I know the buy-to-let people are screaming at me now saying, Nick, yeah, that's all well and good, but you're ignoring rental income. That's a big thing. I get that. Yeah, maybe, whatever. But rental income, okay, I know that, yes, I am ignoring rental income, and it also is a big component. But rental income typically goes and just paying the mortgage. A lot of the advisors, the clients I've spoken with who have buy-to-lets over the last 20 years have been buying for capital gains. And I think they're illusory, these capital gains. They're just really not there to any great degree. And you've got the utilities, you've got the rates, you've got the replacement of white goods. If you have a property for 18 years, imagine my property wasn't my home, but a buy-to-let. Over 18 years, I don't know what the average tenancy is. Would you get maybe three tenants in over that time? Does that feel about every 6 years or so? So every 6 years, you have a deep clean. You've got to revamp the place, more sunk costs. You're going to have void periods. buy-to-let landlords were making money just about, I think, during the time of stupidly low interest rates. Well, those days are gone, and interest rates now are only at where they've historically typically been in the UK. So this clamour to get them cut and cut quickly, I don't bank on that. 4 or 5% is typically where they sit, and the buy-to-let landlords now are really struggling. And yes, the tax situation has changed, but that's the way governments work. You do something and then they change the rules. I mean, just you've got to suck it up. So I think I did share with you guys on WhatsApp. I declined a client recently, a prospect who was referred to me by an accountant, primarily because the clients had a lot of money in buy-to-lets, and I just we can do the voyance, we can do the cash flow for sure, but intuitively we know as experienced real financial advisors, you look at a client's assets on a bit of paper and you can kind of work out they're going to be, there's just not enough in pensions, so there's not enough liquid stuff. This client's it's going to be a nightmare. She's going to have to sell her buy-to-lets, which you won't want to do. Capital gains tax, not the right time of year, got the wrong type of whatever, all the stuff that goes with property. It's I just find it a nightmare. I don't understand the love with it. I've never been attracted to it. I used to have it in my client portfolios because I worked for Zurich, the IFA division, ex-Allied Dunbar's was, and the one thing we had that was close to with profits was the Allied Dunbar property for the commercial bricks and mortar property fund. So you'd sell that because it was an alternative to equities, and it was okay. But I haven't used those kind of funds forever since the credit crunch, when those funds became highly illiquid and redemptions were cancelled. I then used REITs for a little while in my client portfolios, but I think, as Carl will agree to, they don't actually add much diversification at all. So I don't like property in any shape or form, and but I haven't got the bug, and I know that. I know people do have the bug, and that bug has never got me. Alan, your digit was raised.
Yeah, I think there's at least two different conversations here when we talk about property, because property means a lot of different things. You both kind of mentioned it or alluded to it. One of the reasons people are attracted to it, and I know we'll listen to Carl, because I know that historically what I've known about the Irish market is the Irish love it, but the British love it as well. British love property historically, although I'm absolutely seeing lots and lots of signs that love affair is waning somewhat for all sorts of different reasons.
Yeah,
not least of all
the golden age,
not least of all tax and obviously and interest rates, but they do love it. There's a sense of it's tangible, isn't it? I can see that I own these 3 flats in that block over there. Or I own this building or something. I can show my friends. I can talk to about the area, the location. It's a kind of middle class dinner party type conversation. Versus, I got this really dull investment portfolio that just kind of I can't really talk about it, and it's not very tangible. So there's definitely some behavioral stuff going on there. People like to discuss it, like to talk about it. Nick's point is absolutely spot on. They're looking at the value of the property portfolio, at most once a year if you own property, if you get a valuation, probably once every few years, versus by the hour, by the day, and everything else. So there's a much greater sense of smoothing that exists historically. And Andy made the point as well. I mean, I've come from a background, my family very into property, but my dad is a property developer, and it's all about, as you say, it's about leverage, borrowing against the asset, high risk, but high return if you know what you're doing. But that's an entirely different thing to a DIY landlord who doesn't know what they're doing. They're buying kind of off the page kind of new builds and what have you, where the valuation is kind of made up by the developers at the time. So it's an entirely different thing, and not to be compared. Nick, talking about like investment funds. And I think this is a huge thing. Of course, my days. We haven't had this for a long time, Nick. In my day, back at Standard Life.
Shall we save it? Shall we save it for Trap Live?
We'll save it. But when I was drunk in charge of a wheelbarrow up and down Wembley High Road in Alperton.
Oh, come on,
we sold.
Alperton, whoa, Alperton. I can see my wheelbarrow filling with props signed by the weak and willing. I was 21
and the rest.
when I owned Alperton.
What a tune. What a tune. I love that. Any excuse to play that, and that you must play that at Trap Live. We get the whole audience singing along. We sold the wheelbarrow was full of props for the property fund, because it was the one that sort of seemed to steadily go up. Now, of course, they all came unstuck later on because they are classic open-ended investments with an illiquid asset. They own office blocks and shopping centers and everything else. And all of a sudden, if everyone wants their money out, you can't do it. And of course, it has been now demonstrated largely. I think a lot of them have since closed because during that time you had all these lockups, didn't you? People wanted to get the money out.
The M&G one's just closed. That used to be one of the biggest ones.
It was a big one. But loads of them. If you just at the time when if people were, I mean, in some ways that's the other thing. It was in a way it was quite good because it locked people in, but obviously it failed to deliver on what people wanted, which is get access to the capital in this kind of so-called low volatility type fund. And so they're not really the right asset class for these open-ended type investments. Now, in our portfolios, we do have allocation to REITs, and everything that we do, and I guess you guys as well, is thought through, is evidence-based, is research-based. There is lots of evidence that says owning global REITs is a diversifier. It does show some non-correlated. Look at Hart shaking his head. You know, it's a fact. I can share the data with you. It's a fact. It does show, particularly when you had real global market tension, 2007, 2009, global REITs actually performed reasonably well. They held up pretty well over time. If you have funds which own, data centers, shopping centers, whatever it is sort of thing, they're definitely shown to have more resilience during times of global crisis. And actually, there is data to show that they do provide a small uplift to your expected returns versus completely 100% equities. So as a growth engine, having maybe a 10% allocation to global REITs has proven to be both helpful in terms of dampening volatility during extreme periods of extreme market tension and giving a small uplift to the investment returns. That's a fact. So we do have an allocation. There actually are a limited number of index funds. It's another area, by the way, where sort of global active REIT funds, every single one of them underperforms the market. So buying active REIT funds is pretty disastrous. But you can buy index funds. There's plenty of global REIT indices, and you can buy funds very low cost. There's not a load of them. That's the thing. There's not like there are with equity funds. There's hundreds of them. There's a handful.
How does that work, Alan? How do you have a passive REIT fund?
I think is it BlackRock? We use BlackRock. I used to be invested in the BlackRock one. I just thought it was just overcomplicating and just confusing things. So
you buy a fund. Well, it's the same as an equity fund. You buy a fund which tracks whatever the global real estate investment trust index is, and there are several of them. But you buy them. Yeah, BlackRock is the one we use. There are others. They do make you somewhat skewed to U.S. real estate, and funnily enough, Japan actually is big. So you've got more. I mean, UK property is tiny, like it is with equities in terms of the global REIT market. But the value of global real estate is just vast. It's just, I believe if it's not as much as equities, it's close to it, if not more. It is a huge asset class. Lots of data research suggests that, as I say, it does add a small uplift and it does dampen volatility during periods of market stress. So we have, I think, broadly now in our growth portfolios, I think 10% allocated to global REITs. So it can add value. Does it? Are you better off just simplifying? Maybe you are, but our view is you can do. But of course, that's very, very different to somebody who's got, but I own my property, my own home or something. UK domestic property is entirely different asset class to global commercial real estate.
Can you share a little bit about your experience with dealing with clients that are either property mad or not, for the somewhat younger listeners?
Again, I think if they are property mad, they're unlikely to really want to engage with us. And I've met plenty of people over the years that are exactly that. And they just say, well, why to invest in you guys? I would outperform your equity portfolios. So you tend not to engage. It's certainly got clients, and it's back that, a lot of roads lead back to meet the prospective client where they are. Sometimes we'll meet people and say, look, I do like property. I've got 5 buy-to-lets or whatever it might be. I'm never going to say, well, in that case, you can't become a client of ours. I'll say, interesting. Okay, that's fine. Happy to work with you. Happy to talk to you about that. What we're not going to necessarily do, I don't think we've ever done, is take on a client that's only got those sort of assets. I think over time, like a lot of things, you begin to, you have good conversations, you educate, you look at things, and you begin to unravel this love affair for property. And I think one of the biggest things really is, and particularly we speak to clients as they get older, and as they go into retirement, and they've got this view, there is a view out there, and there's lots of media and companies selling this stuff about creating a passive income stream. Own property is a passive income stream. As we know, it is the least passive income stream you could ever have. And I talk about these various factors of why do you invest in the first place, and particularly as you get older. And I just call it the hassle factor. And again, like you guys have mentioned, I'm a buy-to-let landlord as well. I mean, one of my tenants is my mother-in-law, which causes a whole set of other complexities and challenges.
Evict.
Yeah. But there is no doubt there's a hassle factor. And I say to those clients who own properties, I say, it depends how active you want to be involved. And they say, well, I pay an agent. I thought, well, fine, again, that's another 10% of your yield or your income, whatever, going out the door. And if you net that all down, plus you may well be able to outsource the stuff to, if there's a burst pipe in the middle of the night, you might be able to outsource that. But it takes up mental headspace. You're thinking about it. You get emails about it. You get updates and what have you. And particularly as you get, if you're young and you got the energy, you want to do it. And some people really are passionate about it.
I think some people like that though, Alan.
Sorry?
I think some people just like that.
They like it.
That.
And it becomes a part-time job for you. If you want to do that, fine. But I say to these clients, particularly going into retirement, you want to be, off on your travels, playing your tennis, your golf, or on your cruise, or whatever it is that you want to do. The last thing you need is to get a phone call about this stuff. So the hassle factors and that'd be fine if you were getting like double the returns or something else. You might be able to be prepared to pay for it. But the data says you're actually getting, particularly on bricks and mortar domestic property, you're getting a lower return than the comparative sort of global equity type portfolio. So, not a fact. I believe it does have a place in the sort of real estate investment trusts do have a place in diversified portfolios, low cost, index based. But beyond that, no, not a fan. Looking forward to the view from Limerick.
Well, let's go over to Carl, yes, because we in the UK, well, globally, we suffered in the credit crunch. All of us did, but Ireland especially, didn't it?
Celtic Tiger.
Yeah, so look, I've kind of couple of points to make in this, and maybe a couple of counterpoints to what's been said already. But I will then finish about how we deal with clients, because obviously the Irish love their property, so it'd be madness for us to be turning everyone away. If you love property, we wouldn't have any clients, right? So I'll finish on that point. First thing to say is it doesn't automatically follow the Irish experience, so my personal experience, that rising rents equals rising capital values, and over a 18-20 year period that you will have capital appreciation. I can prove that because I have an apartment in my pension fund that I bought in 2006, and only this year has the capital value gone ahead of where it was at in 2006. Okay, so that's correct. The rent has gone, maybe up 50% over that period of time, but it's modest enough, right? So there's one good example of the amateur landlord who, this place, I know it'll be value, and it'll, right? That tends to backfire spectacularly, or not. It tends to, it can, and I can prove that. I also have that apartment is in my pension fund. So, all of the crap going on about, the illiquidity and the charges, and you have to now have a professional manager taking I think it's 8% or whatever. So it's just, I can honestly just tell people my story if they come in and say, I want to buy an apartment in my pension fund. I can say, well, you can. We're not the place for you to do that if that's all you want to do. But here's my story. So that's the first thing to say. The second thing to say then is on the REITs, Alan, like you're kind of pointing out that on the one hand, on the downside, you get protected, and on the upside, it's going to give you more. So like, I think perhaps there's some middle ground in there, right?
He'll learn. He'll be out of them in a couple of years. Don't you worry about that.
I'll share the data with you guys. Not anything that we do is facts and evidence based. And I mean, there's no guarantee that will repeat in the future. But certainly during 2007-9 global crisis, they did provide a dampener to the extreme downswings of traditional equities. And yes, there is data to show that something like a 10% allocation historically has given you a small kicker to the outperformance. Again, it's just, I'm not making this up, but we take this stuff very, very seriously.
No, I know that. I was gonna just finish my point on my experience of REITs is on the Irish REITs, right? So, and that dream is definitely busting apart at the moment, right? So, they were kind of, a lot of those were put together post financial crash, right? So it was a new way of investing, and there wasn't gearing and blah blah blah. But those funds tended to act like the stock market as opposed to the property market. Now those funds are struggling now because office rents and prices, whatever. But I will admit that my experience of REITs that I've looked at is the Irish one.
Yeah,
so
I'm talking something very specific.
I'm open to
global commercial property. You would own.
Yeah.
They're listed company, obviously. They're real estate companies. Some New York real estate companies, some Tokyo-based real estate that owns billions of dollars worth of these companies. So it's quite different to, I guess, to an Irish local REIT, which is effectively actively managed, I think, by the sounds of it. Anyway,
100%. But look, they're kind of that's my experience and kind of my thoughts on it. But so how do we deal with? So after all, this is a show for financial advisors. So how do we deal with every single client who walks in and says, "Oh, I've got a load of property," right? So the first thing to say is, if we've got, and I have had those people, Alan, who, the property we'll always beat global equities, and your funds can't possibly beat me. Well, it's like, well, sure, the very best of luck, and shake hands and move on, right? Because there is absolutely no point in talking those people around. But they're thin on the ground now, right? So that was the great thing about the financial crisis in Ireland, that people realized the really successful property developers, and a lot of them were clients of mine, right? So I knew them really well, and they were really good at what they did, and they just got caught because they just went into one too many of the next deals and leverage and gearing and all of that kind of stuff, right? So even those guys now have maxed out their pension funds, and it tends to be in global equities, right? Or something like that. So I think as a nation, we did learn our lesson. We're still madly in love with property, though. So I think, if you get a client in who's willing to maybe fund their pension and do it your way, but have all their other stuff, right? Your software, your financial planning software is where it's all about, right? Where it's all at, and you can bring the client on a journey over a period of time. And this is going back to Alan has said it twice, I think, today, meeting the client where they're at, and frankly being commercial about it, right? To say, well, yeah, it would be commercially viable for us to take on a client who's going to max out their pension fund at 2 million quid. And you go through your cash flow modeling, and then you hit the assets button. And you go through the assets button and you go, and here's your liquid assets. That's your pension and your little bit of cash and your investments. And here's your illiquid. Here's your property. And by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Client, the illiquidity is going to strike when you're hitting towards nursing home fees, or maybe you want to start passing money on to the kids and all that kind of stuff. And you can't sell a window out of a house, right? So, this is the journey you're trying to bring the client on, to say, now, it's the best advice for the client. Let's start with that. This is the best advice for the client, to diversify their property portfolio over time, to make sure, number one, they don't run out of money, because you can have a property, it's illiquid, so you can't sell the window out of a house, but also maybe you haven't got the property rented out at a particular point in time, so your rents have dried up as well, or whatever. So you bring them on the journey, and you try and make that mix of colors. I always say to everyone who met us, get the mix of colors right, okay? Because those colors have to be diversified. That means you have a piece of everything, and it's perfectly fine. And it's going to happen in Ireland that you'll have a lot you'll have a significant portion, the liquid part. But bring the clients on the journey, because they're not stupid. They're going to realize, this makes total logical sense. So that's how we would deal with it.
That makes a lot of sense. And as well, what I'm seeing more of in the last few years is, you take a client on, and you're right, the property is part of the family balance sheet, right? They own it, it's part of their assets, and all the issues around liquidity and income generation and tax efficiency and all that. A lot of people I've spoken to, they do want to divest, but they don't want to sell it all tomorrow. There's huge tax issues. There's just maybe there's tenants in.
Yeah.
But you work together with them over a period of time.
I like the tenants.
Well, no, but you just work it out and you say, look, let's over the next 10 years, let's work out. You've got 6 properties. Let's just work out. Let's build this strategy. This is what a lot of the real value that we deliver is project management. It's strategy. Where are we today? Where would you like to be 10 years from now? And often they say, do you know what? When I am fully retired or when I'm doing something else, I actually don't want to have any of them because I just want a simple life. But I can't do it tomorrow. So fine, we'll build the model, we'll build the plan, and every year or so, and it depends on prevailing market conditions, and the plans will change. But you've got a strategy
and tax strategies as well.
Exactly.
Tax strategies as well, Alan. So you can manage your tax bills along the way. So like I do think genuinely you can have, you can add significant value, and the clients will see it. Now, in my experience, I don't know if this is your experience, Alan, right? That it might take 2 or 3 years to build up the trust so that the client starts to come on the journey with you. That's fine. We're not
here's
going
the thing,
anywhere.
Carl, you don't want to come across, because I know that you're not, and we're not, as being completely anti-property. It's a good thing telling your own story. Like we can all tell our own personal background. We've all shared some stuff today. You tell your own journey. Say that I'm broadly neutral about it. It's an asset class, but I think there are better ways. But if you come across and say, no, the property's rubbish, equities are the only place to be, then immediately you're coming across as a salesman because you've got your toolkit, which has got equities in it, and you don't sell bricks and mortar property. And it sounds a bit confrontational. But to say, no, it's fine. Of course it's got a place. And, how do you feel about it? Do you want to keep it and hold it forever? Have you got a strategy? How are you going to generate your income? What's your tax strategy for this? Do you want to still be looking after this when you're 75 years old, et cetera, and have those? I agree. And like Nick's point earlier on, there are some that you're just going to say, look, it's probably not going to work for us. We've got a slightly different philosophy towards it. We're not anti-property, but we've got a strategy and a different approach. But most people, you can have a healthy conversation, and it's all about getting people from where they are to where they want to be in the future, in the simplest, most tax efficient, most reliable, low cost, efficient way. Nick.
Okay, I'm conscious of time. We're 78 minutes in, and Andy had your finger raised, fellas. So maybe we'll
I was just going to say, again, bringing this back to listeners and younger listeners, I do also say, sorry, excuse me.
3, 4.
God, I don't know what's happening.
Frog in your throat.
I do say to croaky
Bound to
throat.
happen at your age.
Exactly. Young man I am.
What's in his throat?
Don't.
Croaky. Okay, so bring it back to the listeners. I do say to new-ish financial advisors coming into this business that didn't come through the same route as me, as in mortgages and property, I say, look, you do want to get your head around it because it is an integral part of a lot of people's financial situations. So just saying, I've never researched mortgages and don't know anything about them, I just focus on the investments and pensions. I think there's a hole in your arsenal as a full-rounded, real financial planner. A hole in your arsenal. Oh. Okay. A gap, a chink in your armour. We'll cut that out.
Stop taking Andy, please.
Just quit while you're behind.
Okay. So I think it is important to understand how the mortgage business and the property game work. So I do tell advisors, younger advisors coming through, to focus on it a little bit. Because it does crop up. A client will say, well, I've got this property and the mortgage is up for renewal at a certain point. And then again, they'll say, well, what are my options? Sometimes they don't even know that they can remortgage with the current lender. It's some really basic stuff that I've literally sat with a client and said, you just remortgage with the current lender. They said, I didn't know I could do that. And I've saved them £600 a month for the next 5 years. There's like massive immediate wins around mortgages and property, just understanding roughly how it works. Because clients have often, not got much idea at all. So my word of warning to younger advisors, don't totally neglect and discard mortgages and property if you want to be a full-rounded financial planner. That's
last point before we move on is, I think I've talked about this in the past about having your advisor's black book. Every financial planner needs to have at least one really good mortgage specialist. One, if you don't do it in-house.
Absolutely.
We've got one, we've got a couple, and because
holiday homes,
it just comes
up,
out, and then
properties, buying new
especially
stuff,
complex things, and they want to buy it through a company. It's like nothing. I don't know. It's too complicated. But I know a team of people who are really, really good at that, and you can add a lot of value by referring them on.
Okay, we've given that subject a damn good thrashing. Hopefully, we won't revisit property in such depth for quite a while. But I hope, Trappist, you got some nuggets from that, especially the younger advisors, for the reasons that Ultra laid out. Okay, now on my Ultra Swish Nest camera thingy, I can see that Posty is traipsing up the drive to Lincoln Lodge, and she's dragging the bulging sack of Trappist questions. Trappist, if you want us to answer a question, submit via the link in the pinned tweet or in the link in the so-called show notes. We will get to your questions. We're running a bit behind as ever. Let's see who we've got today. Right, Patrick Duggan, bracket South Africa, 4 times Rugby World Cup champions. Yes, okay, Patrick, you're a Springbok. Social handle. Yes, you say Patrick Duggan is your social handle. That's just your name, Patrick. So you might have won World Cups, but you're struggling with just basic communication skills. So that's -5. So now you're down to -1. Right.
That's another chink in his armour.
Exactly. Patrick, my good friend, if you're coming
Or holding
to
his
Patrick,
arsenal.
you're probably quite big if you're South African. Don't hit me. Hit somebody else. Okay. Firstly, thank you for an excellent podcast. Then, and apologies if you've covered the topic in a previous episode, I'd like to hear the Trap team's thoughts, experiences with regard to structured notes, which are becoming increasingly popular given their capital protection and return profiles. Also, any thoughts on other alternative investments such as private debt? Thanking you. Whoosh. I don't think we've covered this directly, but we've given our opinions on these kind of things, haven't we? Does anyone want to talk about this briefly?
Our clients pay us to avoid these. My clients pay me to avoid these. High-end
Why do you
vanilla,
avoid them?
wouldn't go near them with a barge pole. That's
Why do you avoid them?
over and done.
Structured notes, private
Why do you
debt,
avoid them?
alternatives. So, I mean, the biggest question is why? Why do you allocate? Why do you invest? I mean, he has mentioned it about becoming increasingly popular due to capital protection. Again, all these words are dangerous and just mixed messages. You know, we talk about this. It comes up from time to time, and it will come up forever probably because there's always a new thing, isn't it? There's always a new investment, there's always a new fad or a new idea. All roads lead back to having a very thought through investment philosophy. We believe in this because, and you need to really, really spend time and break it down. Again, data, evidence-based, research-based. What is your reason for using any of these alternative products? What role do they perform that either equities or bonds or cash can't do over time? And if you are a real financial planner, this sort of capital protection stuff is irrelevant. It's a nonsense. You don't need capital protection, whatever that means. You've got capital protection in the form of inflation-proof growth through using equities, and you've got short-term liquidity through cash or short-dated bonds. So I would just say to anyone who's considering these things is just go back to your fundamental, ask yourself some very, very basic questions as to why and what role they'll play in a portfolio that existing mainstream asset classes can't provide.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Carl, do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I do. They are illiquid. They pay very high commissions to the IFAs. They are complex instruments designed by salesmen. They are absolutely rubbish. Nobody should go near them. And I would say any IFA considering distributing these to his clients needs to look himself in the mirror and ask him or herself, why actually are we doing it? Is this the best advice for my client? Is my client going to benefit from having this instrument in their portfolio? The answer is no.
But what do you really think,
Just
though,
final
Carl?
point.
What do you really think?
Just a final point. Patrick's a smart dude. I do know him. So I know he's probably referring to a certain type of structured note. So I need to maybe have a conversation with him and get some further information about it. But he's a smart cookie. Back to you, boss.
Okay, I'll just close on this. I just looking at the 10-year figures for our preferred global equity solution, which has returned 10% a year compound over the last decade, despite the fact that's the Wuhan lab leak bedwetting. It's the 7th of October last year. It's crippling inflation, double-digit inflation for the first time in 40 years. And it's still returned 10% per annum over 10 years. That is life-changing, wealth-creating, the elixir of financial planning. Why would you go anywhere else? Why would you pay some of that away to some third party through a dreadful concocted structured node or what have you? I think they're old school. And, I think the advisors that use them in the UK, I can't speak for you, Carl, but in the UK, it tends to be advisors of a certain generation who just, for whatever reason, fell in love with these things 25 years ago and can't fall out of love with them. But they're not
And they'll
They
still
don't-
they'll keep creating them. They'll keep
Absolutely,
creating them.
there'll be somebody, but if you imbibe the Nick Murray kind of ethos about the declines are temporary and the advance is permanent, then why are you protecting against something that's temporary? Why are you giving up so much of the permanent advance to mask against the temporary declines? Insanity on stilts, Patrick. But or each to their own. Each to their own. Right, come on, let's do it. 84 minutes. Shoot me. Let's go on to what many people call. Oh, and Dom, we'll do your question next. Dom Spalding, friend of the show, good guy. Or I think Jonathan's actually the better advisor. He's just a better human being, but they're both okay.
I like Dom.
We'll do your question next time, pal. Let's move on to Culture Corner. Okay, and I'm kicking off here. I'm going to just introduce a podcast from another IFA. I haven't heard much about the guy, actually, but I looked into his website and his podcast. It's quite sound. Pete Ridlington. Don't know if, Andy, you've heard of him at all in your dealings. He's quite a switched-on guy. He's also got this
UK advisor.
This brand that's he's doing this tech thing as well. Another IFA building the sort of back office system. Anyway, he's got a podcast called the Advice Amplified Podcast. We're secure enough in our skins on Trap that we recommend the podcast of other advisors. And his most recent episode is with a guy called Tej Singh, who's a property evangelist and who loves it and is raving on about it. And I was listening to it and I was screaming I was thinking, he's talking about, you have to get up in the middle of the night to unblock a U-bend and all this kind of stuff. But, it's just... And I was just going, but if you want a perspective on why people go into property and why people will never be switched off from their love from it, I would listen to that podcast, link in the so-called show notes. And very quickly, friend of the show, John Doyle, who's on Twitter as Juniper_John, good guy, good firm. I've just switched my password management software from LastPass to Keeper Security on his recommendation. LastPass has had a few security breaches recently, which gives me the abjabs. And my first experiences of Keeper Security as a all-in-one password manager. Look it up, Alan. Very positive. Right, on to the next Culture Corner.
Oh, God. Right, Diary of a CEO. Jimmy Carr's back. Jimmy Carr is turning into a modern-day philosopher. Got some really, really insightful stuff to share, so do check it out.
Does, actually. He's
watch it on YouTube. He's also got a show out on Netflix. I can't remember what it's called, but I'll recommend that once I've watched it. I've listened to this podcast. Thank you very much. Over and out.
Okay, good stuff. And I listened to Jimmy Carr on the Trigonometry podcast, so he's obviously touting his Netflix special. He's an interesting guy. I mean, his humour, I can take or leave it, but he's a rounded individual and he does think about things. He doesn't just take the rote script that so dominates the entertainment industry. Okay, next point.
David McWilliams podcast.
Oh, get in, Carl.
Two in a row.
Right.
The David McWilliams podcast is really actually good. And this particular one, he's interviewing Michael Lewis, who's talking about his book, I think the SBF book that you recommended before, Andy.
Going Infinite.
But it's just really interesting, and they kind of wrap up with a kind of synopsis at the end. I just thought it was really interesting. Good insights, and
Who's David
really good
McWilliams?
podcast, worth a listen. He's kind of a well-known Irish economist. He used to work in the city of London.
He's got his own
as
podcast,
a trader and that kind of stuff. But he's
a successful podcast host, Alan. You wouldn't know much about him.
He's one of the 85. Yeah.
84, I told you.
Oh, sorry.
Anyway, that's an in-joke. We'll move swiftly along. Yeah, listen to it. It's good.
Okay.
I'd like to mention someone that we have mentioned on this podcast in the past. He is a close personal friend of mine. I'm having dinner with him tonight. But it.
All right. So he pays for the dinner. You'll be able to say, I mentioned you on the podcast
indeed.
today.
We said no pay to play, Alan.
Coincidence.
You're breaking the rules. You're breaking.
I'm sure I'll pay.
Law
I'm
number
sure I'll
6
pay.
of Trap.
You're the only one that I've ever let pay for me, Andrew.
Oh yeah, right.
Brett Davison is a consultant to financial planning. He for those who know him, he's well known. But there's a lot of people who I don't think who do know. That's a classic statement, isn't it? I was laughing myself as I said it. But Brett Davison, he puts out his blog, his regular sort of updates and newsletters. And I must say, every time I read it, I kind of nod my head. It's almost like he understands the zeitgeist. He understands what financial planners are thinking about, their issues, their challenges, their opportunities. And if you haven't subscribed to, it's called FP, F for Freddie, P for Peter, FP Advance. Brett Davison, subscribe to his newsletter. He puts out a lot of content, and honestly, I think it's really, really good. So I want to give a shout out to Brett.
He also does a really good course. I know a lot of people have gone on. I think Uncover
Yeah.
Your Business. They take in sort of
three-year
every
recurring program, and it has transformed a lot of businesses who were looking to improve, get better. So Brett is definitely one of the good guys, and he's what they call a straight talking Aussie, isn't he? He just if you're worried about f bombs,
that's the best thing
don't hire him.
about Brett. Yeah.
If you like it, said as it is, then listen to what he's got to say. Definitely.
Yeah, he's no BS, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very, very direct. I do like Brett. Okay, fantastic. Now look at that. It's almost exactly 90 minutes of our lives that we'll never, ever get back. That's a wrap for this episode, dear Trappist. Thank you for your precious time and your input, because it's your show as much as it is ours. Please do rate us and leave us 6 out of 5 stars on iTunes. Remember to subscribe. That way the podcast lands freshly baked on your phone every other Thursday. And do the same with our YouTube channel. A surprising number of people like to look at us gormless jabronis, and we're around 800 subscribers now on there, which is really, really good. But until the next time, folks, take care out there. Adios, and we look forward to seeing so many of you live at Trap Live on May the 9th. It's coming up, and there you can meet the lovely Penelope. Let's just leave one more time with this blooper, which I'll never play again. If you've got kids in the car, throw that out the window now.
Hello, dear Trappists. This
I'll play the right one,
details,
shall I?
including a link to the purchase tickets. Fuck.
Goodbye, Trappist.
Bye now.
Bye bye.